is. I think we are unique for lots of reasons. But we'll talk about stars a little bit. I hope you can see this. This is a picture of a spiral galaxy. Light years are a measure of distance, not time. It's the distance that light travels at its present rate in a year. This galaxy is about 2 million light years away, apparently. Here's another one. You see these pictures in magazines and all the time. Here's a galaxy, spiral nebula, that's 18 million light years away. So it's about 9 times as far as the previous one I showed you. Here's one, in fact 2, but they're about, the big one, the main one here is 25 million light years away. These are big distances, especially at the speed of light. Set that aside. Here's one that's 32 million light years away. Here's one that's 65 million light years away. These are all spiral galaxies. There are lots of other nebula, but these are spiral nebula. And here's one that's 106 million light years away. Now, I don't know if you've noticed as I was flashing through these things, but here they all are at one time. And do you notice anything strange about these galaxies? One's only 2 million light years away, 118, 125, 130. I put them in, deliberately put them in distance order, okay? Do you notice that their arms are spread out almost the same? Well, what's that got to do with anything? Well, here's the point. The furthest galaxies had to release their light long before the closer galaxies, obviously, okay? Because light's not infinite, it's finite, it has a finite speed, whatever it is. The further galaxies did not have as much time to rotate and twist their arms. We should be seeing the further galaxies earlier in their cycle, right? Thus, the closer galaxies should have the most twist, but they don't. The furthest galaxies have just as much twist as the nearer one, which says they're all done at the same time. The speed of light, even if the speed of light was 1 million times faster in the past, that would account for them being so similar. This is another one of the reasons that the speed of light issue starts to tie things together that would otherwise be very mysterious. Some other insights. It's interesting that from Job 40, we talked about Job last time. Job 38. Where is the way that light dwelleth? Light's dynamic. Darkness is static. These are a remnant of some of the things we pointed out from Job. We went through Job 38 last time. And this, canst thou bind the influences of Pleiades or loose the bands of Orion? These two constellations are the only two in the heavens that are gravitationally linked. Other constellations look like a grouping, but they're really not, because some are close, some are far. But these, Pleiades and Orion, are in fact have a gravitational relationship. And so I don't know how Job knew that, because most astronomers today don't realize that. Now I want to talk a little bit about the signs in God's plan. We would call these signs the zodiac, and the Hebrews would call it the Mazzaroth. So let's take a look at this. Psalm 19 is one of several places that deserves some very special attention here. Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Now, as a teenager, I used to enjoy this psalm, and I took for granted that what it's talking about is the creation. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. And indeed it does, don't misunderstand me. But then it goes on and says some other things. It says, day unto day uttereth speech. Really? You don't mean acoustic speech, certainly. That's empty space. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out throughout all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. What? What words? I almost expect to go out there with a telescope, see if I can find some words spelled out. It's more than just galaxies and nebula and whatever, apparently. Of course, the song goes on. I want to talk about signs in the heavens. And in the Hebrew, what we call the zodiac, they would call the Mazzaroth. Now let me put your mind at ease. We're not getting into astrology. but it's just a matter of history that groups of stars have names. What's interesting is that these names are almost the same in all cultures and have been so for thousands, more than 4,000 years. So they're a convenient way of speaking of, if I can mix a metaphor here, geography. If I tell you that there's a star in Andromeda, or near Andromeda, or whatever, astronomers know where to look. You follow me? They're geographically. There are 12 classical clusters, constellations, that are on the ecliptic. If we take the Earth and extend its equator, you've got a celestial equator. You also have the apparent path of the sun through the sky in a year. That's called the equinoctial collar, or more simply, the ecliptic. There are two places where the ecliptic crosses the celestial equator. We call those the equinoxes. That's when the days and nights are of equal length. When it's furthest north or south, that's the solstice, winter, solar solstice. Now, our days are determined by where the sun is, apparently, in the path. It's actually where the Earth is, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay. These 12 constellations that are on the ecliptic have names. And we would call them the zodiac. By the way, first let's step back a minute. Do you realize how many stars there are in the universe? There are hundreds and hundreds of billions, so much so that there's no number I could give you that we could even relate to in terms of galaxies and so forth. But here's the mind-blowing part. The next time you run into that, a planetarium show or a book on astronomy, realize that every one of those stars has a name. You know, when you start thinking about that, that's wild. Psalm 147 verse 4 and in Isaiah 40:26, God calls them each by name. Wow. Let me tell you, I wish we knew more of the names. We know a few of them. And what few we know are absolutely stunning. All the stars have a name. Now, what we call the zodiac, that's from the Greek zodiakos, which comes from a Hebrew root, which comes from Sanskrit, but means zodi. It means the way. Now, most astronomy books assume that it's called the way because that's the way of the sun. It's the path of the sun. Having studied this at some length, I'm thoroughly convinced that this term is being used exactly the same way as it is in the book of Acts. It's an allusion to God's plan of redemption. God's plan of redemption. One of the earliest zodiacs we know of is in the Temple of Dendera in Egypt. It's about 2000 BC. And it's interesting how when we find other zodiacs, they're all derivative of the same kind of name, same kind of concepts. The Temple of Dendera is in Egypt, and it too has all these colorful types of appendages to the classical signs of the zodiac. Now, what most people don't realize that these, by the way, the 12 signs of the zodiac are linked to each of the 12 tribes of Israel. I'm going to leave that out for this discussion because we can't possibly even get into all of this, but something you do need to know, we're going to start with Virgo. It starts with Virgo, ends up with Leo. That's the cycle. So how do you know where to start? Because of the Sphinx in Egypt, the head of the woman and the body of the lion. And the word Sphinx means the binding together. But let's get on with this. Virgo the Virgin, we've all heard about that. What you may not realize, for each of the 12 constellations, there are 3 closely associated with it. They're not in the ecliptic, but they're nearby. They're called decans. Now, the decans for the Virgin are Coma the infant. Now, that's weird. Why would a virgin have an infant? Think about it. It means the desired one, incidentally. Centaurus is a dart piercing a victim. Booty is the great shepherd and harvester. The next major constellation is Libra, which means the scales. And the three decans for it are the cross, the victim, and the crown. That's kind of interesting. Then you have Scorpio, as we often hear taught, which is serpent's the serpent, no surprise. Orpheus, which wrestles with the serpent. And when he wrestles with the serpent's biting him on one heel, but he's got his foot on its head. Does that ring familiar to you? Kind of interesting, isn't it? Hercules, the mighty man. Sagittarius has Lyra the eagle holding a lyre, an altar, Draco the dragon, the old serpent. Capricornus has an arrow, an eagle, and a dolphin. And Aquarius has a southern fish, a winged horse, and a swan. Pisces has the band. Andromeda is the woman in chains, and Cephas the crowned king. Aries has Cassiopeia. These are all the deacons. The woman enthroned, we all know that's that bent W that's near the pole star. The sea monster who was bound by a lamb, and Perseus, an armed-minded man. And then Taurus has Orion, the glorious prince, Orion's river, and a shepherd. Gemini has the hare, and two dogs, the major dog, Sirius, the great dog, and Procyon, the minor one. And Cancer has Ursa Minor, Ursa Major, the lesser and greater sheepfold, and Argo, the ship. And then the last one is Leo, who has the fleeing serpent, the cup of wrath, and the bird of doom. Now, these are all embellished with colorful stories that are very similar in most cultures throughout thousands of years, slightly different here and there. But let me tell you what everybody gets told that's not true. Everybody says, well, these are pictures, and they've built stories around the pictures because that's the way they look to them up there. Well, that's ridiculous. Go out at night sky and look at Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia looks like a W. It's just opposite the pole star. And there's no way, it's a W. There's no way it looks like a woman chained to a chair holding an ear of corn. I mean, come on. But it's consistent. The story's consistent. The cluster of the stars has nothing to do with the pictures that are associated with them. That's something obvious just by looking at the pictures. What most people don't know, including most astronomers, is where you get the story is by knowing the names of the stars in the order of their brightness. When you know the names of the stars in the order of their brightness, you can put together the story that originally was told about it and the pictures to remind you of the story, not the stars. You with me? It's a mnemonic that you teach kids with. You know, if you're teaching the piano, the spaces are F-A-C-E, right? No, there's no face there, but you use that as a way, F-A-C, whatever. It's a mnemonic, right? We all use mnemonics, right? There are many scholars that believe they were the mnemonics that Adam and Enoch taught their kids, God's plan of redemption. And let's go see let's see what we can find out. The first one is Virgo. That's the Virgin, no problem there. Let's turn around a little bit and take a look at it. The primary star, Alpha being the brightest star, is Spica, it means ear of corn. The Hebrew name for this star isn't Spica. That's the one that's handed down through the Babylonian Greek traditions. That's the one the astronomers use. The Hebrew name for that is Semek, which means branch. But here's the interesting thing. There are 20 different Hebrew words translated branch. Only Semek is used exclusively of the Messiah in Jeremiah and Zechariah and twice, and in Isaiah and so forth. Now, something else you should notice, I don't think I earmarked it here in my notes. You notice what she's holding in her left hand. She's got a branch in one hand and an ear of, and grain in the other. And the branch and the grain of corn. Remember John? See, the branch is in her right hand, and the ear of corn in her left. From this and a lot of deacons that surround her, she's the promised seed of the woman. She's the virgin that will give birth to the child that will be the Redeemer. The branch, of course, speaks of the Messiah, and the ear of corn. Jesus explains for us in John 12, unless the corn die, it will not bring life and so forth. The next one is Libra, the scales. Well, the Hebrew name for this constellation is Monzanaim, meaning the scales or weighing. And the Arabic name, many of the names, we don't have the Hebrew names, but we do have the Arabs have a very active astronomy because that's the way they navigate on the desert. And so many of these names, we have the Arabic, not the Hebrew for. Al-Zabina, purchase or redemption is what it means. The Coptics call it Lambadia, the station of propitiation. The Latin is where we get the Libra for weighing. The brightest star is Zubin al-Ganubi, which means the price that's deficient. And the next brightest star is Zubin al-Kamele, which means the price that covers. See, someone is short and somebody else covers for us. That beginning to sound familiar? Revelation 5, Psalm 49, so on. The third one is Gamma Zubin al-Akhrab. That's the price of conflict. And it's pointing towards Centaurus and the victim that's slain. The deacons. The deacons here are the cross. Ooh, that's interesting. The Hebrew Adam cut off. The lupus or victim slain. And the Hebrew name here is Asidah, which means to be slain. The Arabic is Asidatan, which means to be slain. The Egyptian name is interesting. It's Surah for this. It's a lamb. I think that's kind of interesting. And then the crown is the other deacon that's associated with Libra, the crown that's bestowed. And the Hebrew name for it is Atara, the royal crown. And we could go on and on with this. I won't. I'll show you one I think is really interesting. And this is the one where the wrestler is wrestling with a serpent, and his one foot is being bitten by the serpent, and the other foot is on Scorpio's head. So I think that's kind of fun. And this all climaxes at the end with Leo, the lion. And the Hebrew name is Arya, the lion. And of course, this lion is associated with the tribe of Judah. It's a tribal standard. It's interesting that the brightest star there is Regulus in this constellation, which is treading underfoot. Deneb is the judge cometh. Deneb Alisad is the judge shall reign. And the deacons associated with him are the fleeing serpent, the cup of wrath, or cup of fire, Corvus the raven. So these are the constellations that we see. And any place you find some writing about this, unless it's been unusually enlightened, it'll carry with it the baggage of the old mythology from Greek and Egypt and what have you. But let's take a look at the message. I'm compressing several hours if I go through all of these to give you the message that this has. We have Virgo, the virgin, which represents the seed of the woman. This is the constellation of the three deacons. Seed of the woman, Coma is the desire of nations, the man of double nature in humiliation, and the exalted shepherd and harvester. All are carried by the constellation of Virgo and the three deacons that are associated with it. Libra is the price to be paid and the cross to be endured, the victim that was slain, the crown that is purchased. And this gets kind of interesting. Scorpio speaks of the conflict, the serpent's coils, the struggle with the enemy, and the toiling of the vanquisher of evil. Sagittarius speaks of the double-natured one triumphing. He gladdens the heavens, he builds fires of punishment, he casts down the dragon. Capricornus, life out of death, the arrow of God, pierced and failing, springing up again in abundant life. Aquarius, the life waters from on high, drinking in the heavenly food, carrying the good news, bearing aloft the cross over all the earth. You got the Southern Cross in here too. I won't get into that here. Pisces has the multiplication of the Redeemer's people, upheld and governed by the Lamb, intended bride bound and exposed, the bridegroom exalted. Aries has the Lamb found worthy, the bride released and making ready, Satan bound, and the breaker triumphing. Taurus, the invincible rulers come, the sublime vanquisher, the river of judgment, the all-ruling shepherd. Gemini has the marriage of the Lamb, the enemy trodden down, the prince coming in glory, and his princely following. You get to what we call Cancer, the possession secured. It speaks of two folds, the lesser fold, the church of the firstborn, and the greater fold, Israel, sevenfolding into an everlasting kingdom. And the final one, of course, is Leo the lion, the king rending, the serpent fleeing, the bowl of wrath upon him, his carcass devoured. Now, the classic study in this is by E.W. Bullinger, called the Gospel in the Stars. Also, J.A. Seiss, before the Civil War, wrote a book on this. They're probably the two most reliable ones. I have about 4 or 5 of them. Most of them are echoes of much of the same thing. Plus, the big trick is to try to get some of the missing names of stars identified. And so, on the one hand, this is quite conjectural and very controversial. There are many Bible teachers think that this is way out in left field. And on the other hand, it's my view that there is enough here that seems for real to respect it. There are many things in here that are still, we're filling in blanks that we don't really have enough of the names of some of the stars to justify some of the things said. But I want to show it to you because of because of this whole business, that the stars were put there for signs. And God's greatest achievement is not the creation. The creation is emphasized in Genesis and in Romans 1 and in Job 38 and so forth, and Isaiah 40, 44 and 45, etc. But you take a half a dozen passages and that's it. God's greatest achievement, his greatest glory, is not the creation, it's the redemption. See, how do you say that, Chuck? You measure it by two things. First of all, how much space in the Bible is devoted to the subject? Well, the creation has a chapter or two in Genesis, a chapter and two in Job, and a chapter or two in Isaiah, and that's largely it. The redemption, whole book of Genesis. Certainly the book of Exodus, where they're redeemed out of Egypt. Certainly Leviticus, the Torah is all about it. And you go through the historical books, is the whole idea of Israel's ultimate redemption. Certainly the prophets. Certainly the Gospels. Certainly the epistles. Revelation is what's the Revelation all about? The climax of God's plan of redemption. There's another way you can measure how important it is. And that is, what did it cost God? What did it cost God to create the universe? 6 days. Breathed out of his nostrils, as the scripture put it. What did his redemption cost him? It cost him his son. And there are aspects of that that are permanent forever. No, I think that the heavens declare the glory of God. I think the heavens do declare his glory if we do the homework. And tragically, so much of this has been lost through the mythology. It's going to get lost primarily because of what happens in Genesis chapter 11. And we'll touch upon it when we get there. When these ideas, these mnemonics, and the heritage they represent gets corrupted at Babylon. And most of what we know about this in our parlance is the Babylonian translated into the Persian, into the Greek, into the Latin. And garbled, of course.